Welcome in, everyone.
Hello.
This is Everything Sucks, Let's Fix It. My name is Ben Mayer.
My name is Anthony Buono.
Today is September 4th, 2023. We're on episode 15, and we've got a lot to talk about.
So much to talk about. You might notice a little difference in the video quality. We've upgraded a bit. I hope that the video quality looks good. It would be really embarrassing if it isn't, and I'm saying this, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited. So let's jump into current events. Let's start with the Biden impeachment inquiry that is getting mulled around at Washington right now. So I think the House Republicans have been investigating Hunter Biden's business deals in regards to Ukraine and how he leveraged his father's name to make a lot of money in China as well, all over the world. And basically just hardcore nepotism trading on Biden's name.
Yeah.
The House Republicans are suggesting that Biden is also in on Hunter's deals, that Biden is trading policy favors based off of these deals, and on that account, they're going after with the impeachment. The issue is they have not connected the dots fully yet to prove that Hunter Biden's businesses have directly impacted Biden or any policy decisions Biden has ever made.
Yeah, exactly. The idea is that Biden has, for example, given additional aid to Ukraine in return for positions or like given to Hunter Biden, money paid to Hunter Biden, money that came into the Biden family, or that they had information on Hunter that they were blackmailing Joe Biden with.
Yes.
To elicit that kind of support.
Yeah, and so now this also goes back years ago. There was a prosecutor in Ukraine that was going after Burisma, or was thought to be going after Burisma, and Biden made it kind of like a policy goal to get that prosecutor fired out of Ukraine. Now, the European Union the entire European Union wanted that prosecutor fired. As well as the entire United States government, because of that prosecutor's suspected corruption. And he was not investigating Burisma at the moment of his firing. But Republicans are saying that the reason that prosecutor was fired was to protect Hunter and to protect Biden. And that was the whole reason, which is a heavy charge. Listen, if they want to open an impeachment inquiry, go right ahead. I would love to find out if Biden's a crook. Because if he is, I don't want him to be president.
Exactly.
Right?
It seems so unlikely, but also like that is what they would want us to think.
Right.
So I agree with you. I think the consensus that I've read is that the evidence is pretty flimsy.
Yeah.
Is that this all kind of points in the direction of maybe there's something wrong, but nothing that has been uncovered thus far is a smoking gun.
Right. And look, is it wrong to trade off your famous father's political name? Yes. But you know who else did that? Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, right? The amount of money that they raked in during the Trump years. Like, we're talking multi-billion. Like, at least Jared Kushner made $2 billion off of deals with Saudi Arabia. There were times where Saudi Arabian officials would buy out every room in a Trump hotel prior to Trump visiting Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
Like, even though that's wrong, it's not illegal.
Right.
And where it gets illegal is only if the president is using his presidential powers for the sake of bringing that money in. And I won't even say that I wouldn't even accuse Trump of doing that.
No.
I don't think that Trump's did that. And I am certainly not convinced, at least, that Biden has done that.
No, I've seen no evidence that Trump did policy favors based off that. I've seen no evidence that Biden has done policy favors based on that. So if you can show me the evidence, I'm all for it. But, I think Biden is actually kind of okay with the impeachment inquiry. He's not nervous.
No, I think the more interesting part of this is the politics, because I don't think there's any chance of the impeachment actually going through. So I think it's good for Democrats.
I agree.
Because the general political gamesmanship of trying to tarnish the other side, I think, just plays badly upon independent voters specifically.
Totally.
It seems like politicians don't care, like they care less about getting things done and helping their constituents, and instead on winning the political game. And I think impeachment is a great example of that. I think it played against the Democrats to try to impeach Trump
Yeah.
during his term, and I think it'll do the same thing to the Republicans.
I
now.
mean, yeah, we have a good example with Bill Clinton in the 90s when they were impeaching him for the Monica Lewinsky scandal. His approval rating shot through the roof, and he actually performed better after impeachment than he was going to.
Mhm.
So I think Biden is ready to channel that energy. The issue that the Republicans have is they're in between a rock and a hard place. I mean, a lot of the times we talk about the show is these parties are trying to balance the moderates and their base, which is like the extremist faction. And the extremist base of the Republican Party is saying, impeach Biden right now. Donald Trump is tweeting out or whatever, is saying all the time on Truth Social.
Truthin'.
Yeah, truthing it up. Like, you need to impeach Biden. He's a crook. Get him out of there, or our country's going to fade away. I think that was his quote, right? So it's just hard. And I don't know. I think McCarthy is even reluctant to do it at this point.
Yeah, what I've also read is that McCarthy might be reluctant to do it, but McCarthy thinks it might be a way to placate the extreme base,
Yeah.
while also not allowing the government to shut down.
That's
this
perfect.
fall.
That's exactly what it is. I'm so glad you said that, because I also saw a hard right Republican, I wish I remembered his name, he's in the Freedom Caucus, who was actually saying that McCarthy was using the impeachment inquiry to get his vote on not shutting the government down,
Yeah.
which is actually really good political maneuvering for McCarthy, because I think a government shutdown is worse than an impeachment.
Yeah.
And so if he's got to pick between the two, he's going to pick the impeachment 100%.
Definitely.
He doesn't want the government to shut down. There's no shot.
Yeah, McCarthy is in a really, I mean, he has been for a while, but he's in a very difficult political position,
Yeah.
with his role.
No, it's just so difficult. And we'll see how the impeachment all plays out. The point is, though, it's not the most important story of the week. It's not the most important story of the month. It's just interesting politics, right? Now, I want to go to something that I think is important, if you're ready to move off it.
Sure.
And I want to talk about what's going on with food security in the U.S. and how the government's role in it might be changing in a bit. So a federal program that helps poor families afford healthy food could see substantial benefit cuts starting in October. Now, this would be affecting 6 million low-income Americans, and it is at the front lines of this shut down the U.S., shut down the government battle, and funding the government. It's at the front of the line here. So we're talking about WIC. This is a program that gives financial support to low-income pregnant and nursing women, as well as children up to the age of 5. Okay?
So this stands for women, infants, and children.
There you
just
go.
To be clear.
Yes, thank you. They qualify aid based off the purchases of foods, and they get cash vouchers for fruits and vegetables, and it's integral of introducing a more diversified diet into low-income families. This program was heavily expanded under the coronavirus. After the coronavirus, we saw a massive expansion of the payouts to people. So we saw Congress increase the fruit and vegetable voucher to $24 per month for children and $43 for pregnant women and postpartum women and $47 for aid recipients who are breastfeeding babies. That is up from $9 and $11 before the pandemic. So we're talking like a triple, quadruple amount of the benefits that people were getting. And they also streamlined the process of signing on to WIC, making it easier. Since the coronavirus pandemic and the passage of the American Rescue Plan, we've seen the number of people signed up for WIC jump from 6.1 million to 6.7 million. And this is happening in the midst of a hot, tight labor market. Also, so that's what's going on the side here. And WIC has now become easier to enroll in. The benefits are better. Families are healthier. And, the issue is now they've run out of money faster than they thought.
Yeah. Yeah, and a huge target for these government shutdown talks, we've already talked about how SNAP is on the table. And
right.
Republicans are looking to cut SNAP funding. So this is another avenue for food assistance. To me, it resonates because it's reminiscent of a discussion that we also always have on the show, which is we want a more robust government aid, but they need a way to pay for it.
Yeah.
So we need to be okay with taxing more. And this is what happens when we don't do that, right? We are hit with something like the coronavirus. We are going to continue to face other shocks to the stability of American families. climate change is the first one that comes to my mind, that are going to precipitate the need for more government aid and intervention in people's lives, specifically those on the margin, the poorest families in America. And when you have a political divide over the amount of funding that the government gives to these programs, you're constantly trying to balance between overspending, putting us more deeply in debt, and giving people the basic needs they need to live.
Right.
And so it's just this tough situation where everyone wants both, right? Everyone wants a government that helps, and they don't want taxes raised.
Right.
You can't have both. I'm sorry, and one is more important than the other.
Yeah, it's absolutely more important. It's hard now because in the House, with a Republican-controlled House, there is no shot taxes get raised under any circumstance. It's not possible. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I can think of Democrats can do to sustain these benefits is to pass it now and then tax later. But that's risky. Because if they don't win, then they can't tax later, and then it just gets harder and harder, and then more programs have to go in the future.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like it's like taking a lot of opioids in the moment for your pain, but also, getting yourself addicted and destroying your life in the process, right?
Totally.
It makes you feel good in the moment, but what happens 5 years from now? And I want to be clear, I support this. I want it to get expanded, but I want it to be taxed and raised money for later.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Progressively taxed, hopefully. That's the whole point.
That's the whole point.
The burden can fall on the people who can afford it, rather than food being taken away from people who literally can't otherwise feed their families.
Exactly. And so this is the effect if we do not keep the expanded version of WIC. It will lead to a 70% reduction in support for fruit and vegetables for pregnant women, and a 56% reduction in support for children, and will put 1.9 million people on a waiting list to get access to this program. 2 million people. That is basically almost a percentage point of the entire U.S. population. 1 out of 100 people might get affected by this. Yeah. And so that's just tragic, because this is not the thing. If we're going to be talking about dealing with government waste and government spending, I don't think the issue is pregnant women getting fruits and vegetables. I don't think that's the stuff that we should be targeting against. There are plenty of other things. There's a great bill that's on the floor now that I wish I remembered the name, that is targeting overspending to defense contractors for goods, right? There's reports that we're spending $1,500 on breast pumps for women that are actually $200 at Walmart. Explain to me how, those are the things that we go after.
Well, that reminds me of also Medicare not being able to negotiate for its drugs. That's something that we're paying too much money on, spending too much money on. And that's something that an article came out earlier this week that we should have had on our sheet.
We totally should have. That was such a big deal.
Yeah, but basically, very briefly, the U.S. is going to be able to, they've announced 10 of the first drugs that they're going to be able to negotiate for on Medicare.
This is going to save people so much money.
Yeah.
And it's a direct attack against the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry is not taking this lying down. They're going to sue, and it's going to be a hell of a fight. But this is something that the Democrats have been fighting for since 2004. I recently rewatched. So on the last couple of shows, I was a nerd for reading The Economist. I was a nerd for watching Meet the Press every Sunday. Now I'm going to out myself again. I'm a nerd because I like to watch old presidential debates. So I was watching the John Kerry-Bush 2004 second presidential debate, and John Kerry was pushing for Medicare negotiating drug prices. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, is it really taken 20 years?
That's so sad.
For us to just get this one little reform?
Wow.
It's taken us 20 years to get that. And there's still a chance that it could be shot down in the court.
Yeah.
I don't think that will happen.
I don't either.
But there is a shot. But so this is all good things coming out of, or no, these are frightening things,
scary things
coming out of the House. Good things that the Democrats are fighting for, and I'm happy to see it. But there are also some Republicans who I don't think are for this. There are moderate Republicans that exist that don't really want to cut WIC.
No, but it's not a politically viable position for anybody with an R next to their name to say that they don't want to cut government spending.
Yeah, and I wish that this was the thing that more people knew about the Republican and Democrat Party differences, right? Because a lot of people view the Democratic Party and they think, oh man, those are a bunch of college kids in big cities that don't care about rural America, and they, look down on people like us. They're all academics, the coastal elite. They only care about abortion and pot, and they don't care about anything else. No, right now, the biggest line divide in the House is who is getting food to pregnant families and who isn't.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the Democrat and the Republicans. And Democrats need to run on that. They need to take that divide and push that on every media screen in the country and make it very clear. This is the difference between the parties.
Yeah.
Do not get sidetracked by all the cultural issues about the transgender rights. Forget about all that. Do you want pregnant women to have fruits and vegetables in their fridge or not? If you don't, vote Republican. If you do, vote Democrat. That needs to be the line of attack.
I like it.
All right. Now we're going to get off Biden's dick because he did something bad. Or at least his administration is leaning towards recommending doing something bad. And this scares me. All right. So a report came out from Biden's National Infrastructure Advisory Council. I don't have the guy's name who runs the council. Unfortunately, I forgot. But he is an ex-Wall Street investor. That's what he did. So he wrote this report recommending that local communities remove barriers to privatization, concessions, and other non-traditional models of funding community water systems. So this advisory board is recommending that Biden makes it easier to privatize our water systems. This makes me nervous because I don't like the idea of private utilities generally. We talked a lot on the show about rent-seeking behavior, and this is a very, very serious rent-seeking behavior where, like, once you build out all the infrastructure, you're just continually siphoning money out of people's pockets for the water, right?
Yeah.
So the benefits that he cites for the increased levels of privatization is that private companies will have more of an incentive to spend on improving their infrastructure because they have more of a profit motive to make sure that their stuff keeps running. Now, I have not seen that bear out, but that was his argument. Okay, so now we had a response from a public water campaign director. Her name is Mary Grant. So Mary Grant, the private director of the Food and Water Watch public campaign director, okay, this is coming from the opposition to this advice. So she says that privately owned water systems charge 59% more than local government systems, and private ownership is the single largest factor associated with higher water bills. She also then pushed for the Democrats in the House to pass the Water Affordability, Transparency, Equity, and Reliability Act, also known as the Water Act, which is a nice... Wow.
Yeah, really quick, just to interrupt you. Even though we don't know where these figures are being cited from, it doesn't shock me at all that introducing the profit motive into the system would make the cost rise that much.
Right, I know. Right?
Just very quick.
Yeah, very obviously the profit
logically it makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense. But as a very due diligent person that I am, I did some research on it. So I found an article, or actually a research paper titled "Water Pricing and Affordability in the United States: Public versus Private Ownership." Okay, so this study examined 500 of the largest water systems in the United States and explored whether ownership is related to annual water bill pricing. And what we found was that what the study found was that regression results. So they used a combination of linear and polynomial regression. Showed that amongst the largest water systems, private ownership is related to higher water prices and less affordability for low-income families. In states with regulations favorable to private providers, water utilities charge even higher prices. Yes, and they found statistically significant evidence that private sectors and favorable private regulations were doubling, tripling, quadrupling, similar to that number that she was citing. For the cost of water.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've talked about how when you apply capitalism to the basic human needs, that's where things start to not work. Exactly. That's when your society starts to get really hurt by allowing the system to infiltrate that much. So it doesn't really shock me at all that it's the case with water as well.
I'm just disappointed that someone that Biden appointed is suggesting this. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate. Now, I hope there's people in the room with Biden that are going to be pushing back against this. But I think this is somewhat of an example of Biden's moderate past, kind of informing who we appoint sometimes.
Sure.
And I think people wonder what's the difference between a Biden and Bernie administration. What would have been the difference, right?
This would have.
I think this would have.
Yeah. Maybe
Biden doesn't push on this. He might not even talk about this. He might not push anything about this. But this guy would not be in the room if Bernie was there.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, I'm wondering, like, what is the reason, like, this can add to the GDP?
Well, the reason is that they want the infrastructure to get upgraded faster. And they think that if companies have the profit motive in mind, then they will be more incentivized to upgrade the infrastructure than the government, who doesn't have a profit incentive to do so.
That's fair.
That's fair, and I get that. But when we talk about how long did it take to get those lead pipes removed, it took the United States government to pass the infrastructure bill to get rid of those lead pipes.
Yeah.
Right?
But isn't that because, like, isn't that an argument against?
Right, that is an argument against.
Yeah.
So this is a hard decision. It's
yeah.
I have not been able to found anything that suggests that private companies were more likely to do the infrastructure upgrades, but I do understand where this guy's argument was coming from, right?
Yeah, well, I wonder maybe private companies would upgrade infrastructure faster, but also everyone has to use water anyways.
Right.
And are they really going to be monitoring, like, how they get the water and what exactly the quality of the water is to such a specific degree
if they're already going to get their money?
Their water use? Probably not.
No, right?
No.
And so if we look at, like, electrical companies, right? Some electrical companies in California have been not upgrading their infrastructure for years, and they're all private. You know, I wish I knew the name of the company, the electrical company that runs, like, all of California, but, you know, they've been in a lot of trouble over the last few years because they have not been upgrading their infrastructure.
Yeah, so in that way, it's almost like the profit motive de-incentivizes them because everyone has to use the water anyways, and it's going to cost you to upgrade the infrastructure.
Right. So what is actually the incentive?
Would you do it?
Yeah. So it's a hard call, and I don't know why. Well, no, I do know why Biden appoints guys like this, because it is kind of his past, right? This is kind of the guy he is, and he's been changed through the people around him and the party apparatus, the Democratic Party apparatus. But I think at the end of the day, this is still his core ideology, is to talk to the guys on Wall Street and put them in the room. You know what I mean?
I suppose. I mean, I don't know. I'm okay with having them in the room.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't listen to them.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can listen to them. Part of this show is, like, we want to listen to the different ideas, right? And because I think that's the only way. Because okay, they're pointing out that the infrastructure is aging and damaged, and it needs to be fixed. So let's take that into account. Maybe privatization isn't the way to do it, but maybe we can innovate some other ways to do it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. It's going to be an interesting ride to see. There's been privatization of water in the one that comes to my mind in Chile, and there was massive public revolt against the privatization of water there. I don't think the U.S. citizenry is very in tune with their ownership of their water, so I don't think it would be the same. But there's something going on interesting in Maine now that I wish I put on the sheet, but I didn't. And Maine is actually voting to make the first public utility for electricity across the state, I think. I think they're going to be voting on the first one in the United States, which I think is really exciting.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So let's see. I'm going to pull this up real quick. All right. So we have the campaign, which goes by the name Our Power, is trying to rally Maine voters to support a ballot question that would initiate a state takeover of Maine's 2 investor-owned electric utilities.
Cool.
So on top of the Biden administration having an advisory board suggesting the privatization of water, we have the people of Maine going to the polls in November to vote on whether or not to nationalize their electricity grid, which I think would be a really great step at reducing costs for consumers and putting power back in the hands of the people. So,
I agree.
Yeah, it's a super cool. It's so cool that is getting on the ballot.
Yeah.
Right? That's such like a massive. Like, that's how people and the progressive movement is going to get what they want. It's not going to be through the representative elections because there's too much money that goes into them. There's too much noise, right?
Yes.
There's too much cultural blah, blah, blah that goes into all these elections. We got to just look past all the Democrat stuff. We got to look past all the Republican stuff, and you want to just focus in on the issue itself.
Yes. What do you actually want to happen in this particular specific case?
And this is how Donald Trump wins Florida by 3.5 to 4 points in 2020, but they pass a statewide $15 minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that both happens at the same time.
Yeah.
It seems impossible, but it's more likely than you think.
Because politics have become identity so much more than just about the issues, like, people don't even really know what issues their politicians are representing anymore.
And that's exactly what I was talking about with the WIC thing.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know which side people are on the WIC issue because it's not things getting focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame because I wish that's where our conversation was at.
Yeah, well, it's frustrating too because even, like, I'm even thinking of people watching this show, right? People are only watching this show if they already know what the sides are.
Yeah.
So, like anyone in the media, you can't really reach people to inform them what the sides are. Or maybe you can. Maybe I'm wrong and the media is just covering the political game so much that the issues get lost. And so maybe we can have some kind of effect. But I don't know.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's so sad because the political media is treating politics like such a game for so long that people watch the shows and they think it's like a soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
You know? They hear about the court cases, which are important, but is it really more important than 2 million people getting less access to fruits and vegetables?
Mm-mm.
It's not.
No.
It's not more important than that. That's what matters in this country, and that's what needs to be covered.
Yeah.
That's what we try to do on this show, and that's why I love what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a shame that it's not the focus of the mainstream.
Yeah, the mainstream is like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It's like the 20 main characters of Game of Thrones, even though they're ruling over a kingdom of millions.
Exactly.
Right? And that's exactly what we tend to get in our media coverage.
That's a great analogy for all the other nerds out there. If you're watching the show, you're probably a big nerd too. So
I mean, Game of Thrones isn't even. Game of Thrones is mainstream.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Game of Thrones is mainstream. That's
Yeah.
fair. All right. Now let's get back on Biden's dick. So
Yes.
Biden has appointed some good people to the National Labor Relations Board.
Mm-hmm.
And the person I'm referring to directly is Jennifer Abruzzo. Okay. So what is Biden doing with the National Labor Relations Board? This week, the federal agency that oversees collective bargaining issued a landmark ruling that that experts believe will make it easier for workers to form unions. All the time we talk about on the show, what is the best way to solve wealth and income inequality and the distribution of economic power? Unionization.
Yep.
So the decision, known as Chemex for the building materials company at the heart of the case, creates real consequences for employers who break the law in an effort to keep a union out. Companies have been able to union bust and pressure their employees to not join unions for so long without any consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Starbucks is a great example of this. There were so many Starbucks stores that unionized in towns across New York, and in response, Starbucks just shut down all the stores. And companies like this need to face punishment for these actions.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, who hosts anti-union seminars in their break rooms and sometimes forces people to attend those seminars, that needs to be super enforced. It needs to be easier, and it also can't happen where companies are locking union representatives and union organizers from connecting to the workers.
Yeah, and really quick, as you're saying this, like you're saying it needs to be enforced, specifically, people need to go to jail. Because the problem is usually what happens is these companies are just fined, which makes it just a calculation, right? It's a cost-benefit analysis. It's like, okay, it's how much are these fines going to be? What are the chances we actually get caught and prosecuted versus how much can we save by preventing unions from forming? So since the calculation will often fall on the side of just preventing the union from forming, they are literally incentivized because they know what the level of punishment is going to be.
That's a great analysis.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it
They
from that perspective.
need to go to jail.
Yeah, they
It's
need
the
to be
only way.
super punished.
Yeah.
Now, Biden is pushing a new form of punishment other than jail, other than fines. I wish they were going to jail, but this is what the current National Relations Board is pushing for, okay? If the company breaks the law in such a way that it warrants throwing the election results out, so if it's found that they tampered with the results, they did things that were shown to be union-busting activities, they're going to throw the elections out. The National Labor Relations Board can order the company to recognize the union without a rerun election.
That's awesome.
If they showed any form of tampering or any form of interference or union busting, the union is formed. End of story.
This is fantastic. What this reminds me of our conversation about neoliberalism a few weeks back, and comparing it to Keynesianism.
Oh yeah.
And how this is trying to embed the capitalism more into the government.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Rather than the other way around.
Yes. We're trying to embed this market society underneath another society of different types of social relationships.
Yes.
And that's what this is doing. And now experts and labor leaders are very, very happy. The president of the AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Labor, is super excited. Labor leaders hope that it will stand up and mark a shift from years past when companies could break the law knowing they were unlikely to face real penalties, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fantastic.
And so labor leaders are excited about this, and people on the left very often don't want to vote for the Democratic Party, and some of them are very excited about Cornel West running for president. Mm-hmm. We haven't talked about Cornel West on the show, so I'll throw him in briefly here. Cornel West was a Bernie surrogate, and he's really an incredible guy. He's been a fantastic social justice and racial justice leader in this country for a long time. And while I disagree with him on some of his foreign policy takes, he wants to disband NATO, I agree with almost all of his domestic politics, genuinely. A lot of leftists in the United States are looking to vote for Cornel West, but because they don't like Biden. But at some points, I want you to look past Biden's face and see the people he appoints.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, Biden isn't making the real decisions that matter. It's the National Labor Relations Board and the people he chooses to represent people there. Mm-hmm. And if the labor unions are happy with the people Joe Biden supports and appoints, you should be happy with them too. Because the truth is, as a 20-year-old, 25-year-old person who may or may not be in a union but supports unionization, we need to listen to the AFL-CIO when it comes down to matters like this. We need to listen to labor and be their ally.
I agree with that. The only thing I would say is, in the midst of that, you mentioned that Biden's not the one making decisions. And even if he's not the one making decisions here, I just want to call out that's not the case overall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. He's
just
not
to be nitpicky.
He's not a total puppet.
Annoying.
I wish he was a total puppet, but
maybe he is.
And maybe.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
We'll never know.
I'm just kidding. I don't think he's a total puppet. It wouldn't be cool if our president was a puppet. It's just a joke, guys.
I mean, promise. The point is that the results matter. That's the point.
That's the point, is the results matter. And it's also important who's happy from the results. If labor is happy with the results, the left should realize that and say, this is the best way for labor to get empowered in this country. Yes. I might disagree with Biden, but listen, if you're going to make it easier to unionize, then I'm going to back you. Mm-hmm. You know?
Absolutely.
But I wish I want to talk about Cornel West for a second. Okay. I wish Cornel West would have ran in the Democratic primary. Because what we saw from the Bernie Sanders movement was he shifted the Democratic Party platform so much.
Yeah.
He changed the entire conversation. Mm-hmm. And Cornel West deciding to run for president under the Green Party, he's putting his politics in an echo chamber. Who cares what the Green Party candidate has to say? Yeah. Only people who are going to vote for the Green Party. Who even knows what the Green Party is? Only people who have ever voted for the Green Party. Mm-hmm. You're not expanding the listeners of your ideology.
The discourse.
And that's what needs to happen. And I'm upset that he didn't run he could have been a strong contender in the Democratic primary.
Yeah, I guess it really is kind of more trendy to not run as part of either major party. Yeah. Because it's like I'm not a puppet.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because Cornel West is not a grifter. He is as true and real as they come. He's been doing this for years and he doesn't get any benefit from it. You know, he's only gotten scrutiny. Yeah, he's made money from his books and stuff, but he gets hated on so frequently.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to be in that type of position. Again, I don't agree with him on everything, but domestic politics, he is as good as they come. His politics are from a true sense of love and equality that is unmatched by any other politician in the country other than Bernie. if you're interested in learning more about him, I don't really watch Joe Rogan ever, but I recommend listening to the Cornel West Joe Rogan podcast.
Okay.
It's actually banging.
Cool.
So go check that out. Now let's get into the game. We have talked about how political media and the mainstream media is focused too much on the political game and doesn't focus on the big issues. We're going to talk about the game for a little bit. We're going to start off with some funny news about Ron DeSantis. Okay. And then
we can't go an episode without it.
No. We can't go an episode without making fun of Meatball Ron, Pudding Fingers Ronald. We can't. It just can't happen. So
you have to like add another word every time.
I wish I thought of a new one every time.
Yeah.
I recently bought a mug that I'm not going to show on the show, but it's really funny. It has a picture of Ron DeSantis like stuttering a little bit, and then it just has an expletive on top. And it's just my favorite thing that I own. Okay, so how is Ron DeSantis' campaign doing? Bad.
Poorly.
It's so bad.
Extremely poorly.
It's hilarious. Ramaswamy's catching up on him. Nikki Haley's catching up on him. And his second place lead is now in the margin of error. Pretty much consistently.
Yeah.
On the national level and in the statewide levels. But one state that I think is really interesting is Nevada. So DeSantis is doing this really weird political strategy that no other campaign in American history has ever tried, actually. He has a super PAC called Never Back Down, who is completely in his corner, totally on his side, that is able to raise ungodly amounts of money from all different sources, that is running canvassing strategies for him. Super PACs have never organized canvassing events like this, really. No. The entire ground game of Ron DeSantis' campaign is run through a super PAC.
Interesting.
And what's interesting is super PACs aren't allowed to coordinate with campaigns. So how are they communicating?
Very weird.
Very, very weird.
A little shady.
But the super PAC has recently pulled out the entire ground game out of Nevada. They have officially stopped all door knocking in the state of Nevada.
Wow.
That is an early state. That's one of the first 4. And they've already conceded it to Trump. Not even contesting. They have pulled all of their door knocking out. Door knocking is the best way to make connections. As someone who has door knocked more than anybody else in probably all of Brookline except for Tommy Vitello, if you're into Brookline politics, you know what that means. This is insane to me. This is DeSantis' only shot. Trump is the known entity and the lover boy of the Republican Party, and everyone loves him. You need to get your message out there and talk to people face to face over a cup of coffee and explain how I understand you like Trump, but he is not good for the country, and I don't think he'll beat Biden, and I will. By him not doing these door knockings anymore, that's not going to happen. And it shows his super PAC is losing faith in him. God, do I wish Never Back Down like switches to Nikki Haley or something. God, that would be so funny.
Yeah, they really kind of cornered themselves with the name here.
I know. Never back down as they back down from challenging Trump in Nevada, right? Yeah. So this is what we were talking about, how it's a little shady about the super PAC running these things, right? The Nevada Republican Party attorney informed the Nevada Republican Party leader, their last name is McDonald, that the party cannot work with political action committees, PACs, that are 501c4 organizations to avoid potential dark money issues. This is exactly what's happening with Never Back Down and DeSantis. There is a lot of intermingling going on here. None that you can prove, and none that I'm going to suggest definitely exists, so I shouldn't have said that. But there is a very weird dynamic of a PAC doing canvassing operations.
Yeah.
Because how is DeSantis strategizing if they don't know who Never Back Down is door knocking? Right?
Yeah.
How do you...
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make... Because you don't want to double knock. So how are they trying to do that? Unless DeSantis literally does zero door knocking. Which I can't imagine that. I can't imagine the campaign literally doing zero.
No. Well, I think this article specifically said that they still are doing door knocking in the other early states.
Yes, they're still doing it in Iowa, South Carolina, and New Hampshire. Thank God.
So they clearly do some door knocking. And I would assume this is only an article because they were door knocking in Nevada before, and now they aren't.
So it just shows that Nevada's done for DeSantis. He's given up.
Yeah.
Right? He's given up and he's putting his resources elsewhere.
It's also interesting. Like, I wonder why Nevada is such a specifically like Trump specific haven.
I know.
I guess. I wonder if part of it is farmers. Even though, I mean, there are a ton of farmers in Iowa, but I have heard about organizations of far-right extremist groups like protecting farmland that the government has come after in Western states.
Okay, that makes sense.
Maybe that's part of it, but that is pure speculation, and it's kind of a reach.
Right.
So I don't really know.
I think I don't understand it. Like, DeSantis has really big Hispanic support in Florida, right? He won Miami-Dade County in the 2022 governor election, which is a BFG. That's a big fucking deal.
Crazy. BFG.
BFG.
Big friendly giant. BFG.
Now, I don't think that Hispanic support is going to stretch to every different Hispanic community across the country. Because Trump actually did very well with Hispanic voters in 2020, specifically Hispanic voters in Nevada. And I don't think they're ready to give up on that as the Republican that they like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Probably not. I don't
Probably
think
not.
so.
And if they have him as an option, they're not going to give him away. And now on top of this, DeSantis is also facing a challenge in the state of Florida. Now this is a voting rights victory, very similar to the one we talked about that went down in Alabama.
And Louisiana. Yeah.
During the redistricting process in 2020, the Republican Party of Florida very much this was advocated by Ron DeSantis himself. It's also like the map right now is called the Ron DeSantis map. Like it was basically drawn by him.
Yeah.
Which is very weird.
Yes, very different. I read a little bit about the process that made that come about. I think the state legislature like vetoed the original map and sent it to DeSantis to make. And so then it was just a completely unilateral thing that could happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what he did was he broke up Democrat. I shouldn't say Democrat, really. That's not the point. They broke up a black voting bloc in northern Florida, and they split the black vote into two separate congressional districts, making it impossible for the black people in northern Florida to elect a representative that aligns with the values and the desires
of their community.
And so now a Judge J. Lee Marsh, wrote that the plaintiffs have shown that the enacted plan results in the diminishment of black voters' ability to elect their candidate of choice in violation of the Florida Constitution. Specifically, that it violated the Fair Districts Amendment, which states that lawmakers cannot redraw congressional districts that diminish minority voters' ability to elect someone of their choice. Open and shut case.
Yep.
Right?
Plain
Same
and
deal with
simple.
the Alabama stuff. Same deal with the Louisiana stuff. Open and shut. The Supreme Court of the United States has already said that this holds with the Alabama case.
Yeah.
So we are now in a situation where Democrats are likely to gain a seat in Louisiana. They're going to be gaining a seat in Alabama, despite whatever the Alabama legislature tries to do. They're most likely going to be able to gain a seat in Florida. The Democrats are now going to gerrymander probably the hell out of New York and add 5 more seats out of New York. Democrats are looking really good to take the House now.
Yeah.
They only lost by 5 seats last time. And if you're now saying that the Democrats get 8 seats off the bat, that's hard.
Yeah. Kind of in the bag.
It's kind of in the bag. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And think about 2022 is supposed to be a Republican wave, and they barely won. Now we're going to have a situation where
2018 was supposed to be a Republican wave.
No,
no,
2022.
you're right. Yeah, never mind.
2022 is supposed to be a Republican wave. It was a red ripple, okay? And now we're expected the president is going to be on the ballot. Democrats have higher turnout during presidential years. It's just a different situation now. I don't think this is going to make it harder and harder for Republicans to keep the House if voting rights victories keep happening like this.
Definitely.
Because it's their ideology, not their ideology, their political strategy at the moment is minoritarian rule, unfortunately. They know that they really aren't the majority of opinion at the moment.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to win more voters, they're just trying to limit voters.
Yeah, well, the people who do kind of know what the stances of the parties on the issues are know that Republicans generally support unpopular stances.
Right.
So that makes sense that they're not going to have the popular support of the people.
No, exactly. All right, short break. Had to change the battery. So now we're going to be talking about the Senate races that are going to decide who controls the U.S. Senate. There's 3 to watch. All right. Joe Manchin in West Virginia, Democrat incumbent. Sherrod Brown, incumbent, Democrat in Ohio. Then you got John Tester, incumbent, Democrat, Montana. These three guys have a couple things in common. They are perceived as moderates. They are all in red states. They've all voted for Trump, both in 2016 and in 2020.
The states have, not the senators.
The states have. Now, these are the Republicans' prime opportunities to pick off and take away from the Democrats to get the Senate. Democrats only have one flippable opportunity, and it's Texas. So that goes to show you how bad the Senate map is for Democrats right now.
Yeah.
It comes down to these three guys. So I think I want to do a little lay of the land, and I want to look at these three Senate races. Who are the Republican nominees most likely to be? What's going on in the Republican primaries to get these spots, to challenge these incumbents, and then who's likely to win at the end of the day. Because this is going to decide the control of the Senate. So it's important that we know going forward, the state of the races. So let's start in West Virginia. We've heard a lot of stories about Joe Manchin. He is the moderate's moderate.
His status as a Democrat is arguable.
Yeah, I mean, he has flirted with going independent for a long time.
Yeah.
He's flirted with running for a third party for president.
Yeah. I mean, currently flirting with it, very much could do it.
A lot of people in West Virginia want him to run third party president.
That's unsurprising.
A lot of Republicans want him to in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people think in West Virginia really like this guy.
I must say, I think it makes sense having learned a little bit about Appalachia recently. And West Virginia, like, they voted Democrat for so long. Yeah. And only really over the past 20 years have stopped voting Democrat. Because Democratic policies generally are the ones that are supposed to be supporting those people who are left out on the fringes a little bit more, and they need the maybe government support a little bit more. The reason that they've shifted Republican is because the idea of the coastal elites kind of frowning down upon them.
Right. It's the coastal elite problem that Democrats just cannot get past. But Joe Manchin has successfully been able to skate that line. He was a popular governor of West Virginia, turned senator, and, now he is rocking a pretty high approval rating. Right now, his approval rating in the state is 51%, disapproval at 34%. If you're an incumbent and you're above 50% approval, that's a good spot to be.
Yeah.
It's notable that his approval dropped after the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act and the passage of the American Rescue Plan, because that's him siding with Joe Biden.
Sure.
Right? But now, since he has been in the news very adamant of maybe rescinding some of the IRA money, trying to take money back, trying to fight against climate change, or the opposite, right? Trying to stop the administration to fight climate change.
Yeah.
It's more popular for the people in West Virginia who rely on coal as their main economic opportunity. So Joe Manchin is popular. Who is his opponent most likely going to be? It's one of these two people, Jim Justice and Alex Mooney. Jim Justice is the current governor of West Virginia, used to be a Democrat, and is a fairly moderate Republican. At the end of the day, he is not a hardcore austerity guy who wants to cut all government programs. It's just not him. He's a culture warrior, right? But he's not the type of guy who wants to cut WIC. It's not him. Then he's going up against Alex Mooney. Alex Mooney is a hardcore culture
MAGA
warrior.
Republican.
Exactly. He is the MAGA Republican in the race. And the MAGA Republicans are aligning and following up behind Alex Mooney. And this is the state that I think voted for Donald Trump more than any other state in the country. So you would think this would be a MAGA country state where a MAGA guy is going to get the nomination, but that's not how it's looking. Jim Justice, the popular governor, is leading Alex Mooney in the primary 58 to 26% with only 16% undecided. So it's looking like Jim Justice is going to be able to take it from this guy, which is bad news for Joe Manchin. In a head-to-head race between Jim Justice and Joe Manchin, Jim Justice is expected to get 51% of the vote, and Joe Manchin is expected to get 38% of the vote with 11% undecided. Jim Justice already being up over 50% is really bad for Joe Manchin as an incumbent who has an over 50% approval rating. That's really bad.
Yeah. I mean, of course, this is still early polling, but it makes a lot of sense that there would be a lot of popular support for the more moderate Republican.
Yeah, and he's a popular governor. Yeah. The way that he handled COVID was very popular in the state. He actually did a really good vaccination distribution in West Virginia, like one of the best early on in the country.
Okay.
He did a really good job. So now, but here's the opposite. If the Republicans were to nominate Alex Mooney, we have Joe Manchin at 45%, Alex Mooney at 41%, with 15% undecided. So Joe Manchin has a better opportunity of winning if he is able to go up against Mooney, right?
Yeah.
And this creates a hard dynamic for Democrats here. It's going to be really hard to beat a popular governor.
Yeah.
And Joe Manchin is said to be dead on arrival. The only way he's not is if Republicans mess it up and nominate the wrong guy.
Mm-hmm.
But don't put it past them, because they've done it plenty of other times in plenty of other races, right? They nominated Dr. Oz in the Pennsylvania Senate when they shouldn't have.
Yep.
They nominated Herschel Walker in Georgia when they shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
They nominated Blake Masters in Arizona when they shouldn't have. They don't have a good track record of picking winners. I think Jim Justice is just such a popular current governor that he's not going to have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is still something to watch, and I don't think Joe Manchin is totally dead yet. People have called him dead for a long time. A lot of people didn't expect him to win in 2018, and he did. He won by 3-4%, which is crazy.
Yeah.
A West Virginia state voting for Trump by 30-something points ends up voting for a Democratic senator 2 years later.
Yeah, well, that's why my reaction really to all polling is always like, it looks like this, but you really don't know.
Right. This is all about like the snapshot, and it kind of shows like the main thing that I like to look for in these polls is what's the approval rating of the incumbent.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's hard to think of these 51% that are approving of Joe Manchin not voting for him to stay in office.
Right.
Because he's the one who's had the office, who has done the job that you are approving of. And so you're saying, oh no, I want to take a risk and go to someone else who's doing a job that I don't know how they will inhabit.
That's exactly right. So Joe Manchin, not dead on arrival yet, but it's going to be an uphill battle for him, obviously. So let's go west over to Ohio, where we have Sherrod Brown. I'm going to be completely honest here. Sherrod Brown is one of my favorite senators. He's the chairman of the banking committee. He's very big on banking regulation. He's worked with J.D. Vance, the other senator from Ohio, for some railway safety legislation that probably won't get through the Senate because of Republican backlash, but he is working with his other Republican counterpart in Ohio. He's also fairly close with Elizabeth Warren, who is also involved in a lot of banking and Wall Street regulation. So that's like his lane. He's the union guy who's taken on the banks. That's always been his lane, and that's popular in Ohio. He does not really play the cultural games. He is focused on the economic, right? He's a union guy. So how is the race looking? Well, he is facing off against 3 possible Republican opponents. Matt Dolan, Frank LaRose, and Bernie Moreno. I don't really know anything about Matt Dolan, so I don't really know enough to comment on him. But I do know enough about Frank LaRose and Bernie Moreno, who I think are the guys to watch. So Bernie Moreno is a big Trump guy, massive supporter of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has mulled over endorsing Bernie Moreno, which if Donald Trump does endorse one of these 3 guys, they will be the nominee. If Donald Trump throws his hat in the ring, Ohio is Trump country, they will follow up behind. And the Republican Party of Ohio will follow Trump's endorsement.
Okay.
Frank LaRose, so Bernie Moreno, businessman, Trump guy. Frank LaRose, also Trump guy, current Secretary of State of Ohio. He was really big in pushing for that referendum that we just talked about in August.
Okay.
He was the main advocate for voting yes on Amendment 1.
Okay.
That was his main thing, and he failed there. Not good press for him. He went on Fox News. They kind of roasted him for it. He was like, we did well, and then the hosts were like, well, you didn't do that well. I mean, you still lost.
Yeah.
And then he was like stuttering his way. So how does the race look? Well, we have Matt Dolan at 14%, Frank LaRose at 19%, Bernie Moreno at 9%. That Bernie number is going to go up when Trump gets his hat in the ring, and I don't think Bernie's going to go below Dolan. And then we have undecided, 56%. This race is so up in the air.
So you think Trump is going to endorse Moreno rather than LaRose because LaRose is getting bad press right now?
Yeah. I think Moreno has been sucking up to Trump for like a year now, that I think that Trump feels that loyalty.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that is the political game.
That's the political game. And he wants someone who's going to be all in on his corner, and Bernie has shown that he is all in on Trump's corner.
Okay.
Bernie Moreno has said some other very controversial things. He has suggested that white people deserve reparations for ending slavery. Like
like a reward?
Yeah, like the descendants of white
Wow.
Union soldiers should get reparations for ending slavery.
Holy
rather than like the black people who were descendant of the slaves.
Wow.
So he has suggested stuff like that. So not a cool guy, but you know, it is what it is. I don't know how else to cover that. That's just how it is. So let's look at some of the polling against Brown versus some of these guys. So the approval ratings I've seen for Brown hover around 47-48%.
Also pretty good.
Fairly good. Again, I told you he's a union guy, and that plays really well in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
He's not over the 50, which scares me, but
sure,
he's at it. You know, he's around in that margin of error. So recent polling out of from early July, this is the most recent polling we have. So this is as best as we could do to cover the race. We have Brown at 48 and Bernie Moreno at 41. So Brown leads Bernie Moreno by 7%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we have Brown versus Frank LaRose, tied, both at 45, 10% undecided. Then we have Brown versus Dolan, Brown 46, Dolan 43, Brown up 3.
Mm.
So this is again one of those situations where it's very obvious that LaRose is the best bet at the Republicans winning.
Mm.
But if they mess around and they nominate a guy like Moreno who said some controversial stuff like that, it's just not going to play well.
Yeah.
You know? And
same story, kind of.
And that's what I want to talk about. Basically, all three of these Senate races, it's the exact same story.
Yeah.
This is the struggle of statewide high struggle politics.
And this is the story since 2016. Like, this has been the story every election season.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's interesting that these guys, you know, Sherrod Brown gets into office for the first time in 2006. Which is a Democratic wave year, like a massive Democratic wave anti-Bush year. And Sherrod Brown comes in. The next time he's on the ballot is 2012. Obama wins re-election, right? So he's getting pulled over the line by a Democratic wave in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting pulled over the line by Obama running for re-election. He's getting pulled over the line in 2018 with the massive Democratic wave that was the 2018 elections. 2024, I don't think is that blue wave.
No.
This is the first time I think he's going into an election where it's a neutral environment.
I mean, maybe that's not the case if it's Biden versus Trump.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, right?
We'll
if it's Biden versus Trump, then it's a little different because
the Democrats feel the same way they just did about Trump.
Right.
Yeah, they're just as worried.
Exactly. So that's the Sherrod Brown race. Now let's kick it over to Montana. We got Jon Tester. Jon Tester is just a hell of a guy. He is a Democratic senator from Montana, actually the exact same story as Sherrod Brown. Gets into office in 2006, carried over the line in 2016, wins in 2018. Same story as Sherrod Brown. So it's kind of like this is the last bastion of the moderate Democrat senator in the office. Right?
Okay.
That's who these people are. Jon Tester's a farmer. He was also, I think he was a machinist for a little while, or I just know that he has lost 3 of his fingers. So his hand looks like this. He doesn't have 3 fingers on one of his hands.
Yep.
Which,
God, that's great for politics.
That's
man.
what I'm saying,
that's
man.
Amazing story.
Yeah, and he like comes in on a lot of his parades riding a motorcycle using the clutch with only 2 fingers on his right hand.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm seeing a picture of it that just looks perfect.
Yeah,
like you want this plastered on the front page of a newspaper.
Like that's a man's man right there, missing 3 fingers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's done work. And on his Twitter page, he's so funny. He posts videos of him farming and him cultivating all of his crops and giving updates about the weather. You know, like
That's awesome.
Yeah,
he's in it.
He's in it, man. He's great. He's like, I just finished up harvesting for the season. Time to go back to Washington. And it's like, oh man, like
that's cool.
That's so cool. I love that. It's all a political stunt, but I just love it. You know. And so Jon Tester, how is he approved of? Well, Jon Tester has a net favorable of 47 and then an unfavorable of 46. What I see here is he is the most divisive out of the 3.
Okay.
Joe Manchin being at 51, and then only not liked by like 35% of Republicans or something. same thing with Sherrod Brown. His disapproval is only in the 30s.
Mhm.
John Tester's is in the high 40s at 46, mid 40s. That's unfortunate. But again, his approval is still 47, so the race isn't dead.
Sure.
When 47% of a deep red state is approving you,
Yeah.
you're not dead on arrival.
No, definitely not.
And so who is he going to be going against? Well, in the lead is this guy named Matt Rosendale, and then Tim Sheehy. These are the two Republicans running against John Tester. So in the Republican primary, Matt Rosendale is sitting at 55%, and then Tim Sheehy, he is sitting at 19%. Matt Rosendale is the current at-large U.S. House Representative for Montana.
Okay.
He is a hardcore MAGA, was very big on the election being stolen, was one of the people leading the charge to decertify the election. That is his reputation nationally, and it's his reputation in the state. Tim Sheehy is a businessman, kind of from out of state, fairly moderate, think a little more Mitt Romney type, and he's a veteran. So Mitch McConnell is trying to push for Tim Sheehy to become the nominee to better their chances.
Okay.
When we look at the approval of these candidates, Matt Rosendale, let's see if I can pull that up here. I think I have it, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Okay.
Bottom left here.
It's okay. Matt Rosendale, he has a net favorable of 45, unfavorable 43. So he's less popular than Tester.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Tim Sheehy. He is a not known quality here.
Yeah.
People don't know him. 24% haven't even heard about him, and 19% of people have no opinion about him. So his approval is irrelevant at the moment. Like, people just don't even know who he is, which is a fairly good place to be if you're trying to run as a moderate.
It doesn't mean you have a lot of ground to
incumbent.
gain.
Yes,
right.
You have a lot of you have a lot of stuff to make up for, but you're a blank slate.
Yeah.
And being a blank slate in politics is rare, and it's really beneficial.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that with Vivek Ramaswamy, right? To not have any mistakes that you've made in office to need to defend. That is super advantageous.
No, definitely. And I saw that when I ran for office in Brookline. It was because I was this blank slate, new young guy.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to get to know me. Everyone wanted to support me because they were excited to not just see someone new involved.
Sure.
They were excited to think, like, how can we loop you into what we want?
Yes, sure, definitely. You can be imprinted upon, and also you can only be measured, you can only be judged based on your ideas rather than the actual execution of them.
So true.
Right? And it is so much easier to speak idealistically and with inspiration rather than being like, oh no, we couldn't do this because there are other people that are in government that blocked us and made it harder, right? Like, you don't have to worry about any of that.
This is interesting because let's go rewind Republican debate. You have Vivek Ramaswamy going off about these idealistic causes of destroying
the executive state.
Thank you. Destroying the administrative state. Then you have Chris Christie on the other end of the stage who's like, I was a Republican in a Democratic state, and these are the things I did to balance the budget and make compromise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two totally different types of politics.
Yeah.
And Chris Christie talking like Vivek Ramaswamy would look ridiculous because you could just say, like, hey, man, you were in office already and you didn't do that.
Exactly. But Vivek is able to run basically as if Congress doesn't exist.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So we got on a tangent there about Vivek. Dude, this guy, Ben, is so obsessed with Vivek. He had a dream about him last night. He had a dream that he got high with Vivek and then walked around Trader Joe's with him.
Yeah. I did do that.
You did.
I did have that dream.
Dude, I wish I knew what you were talking about. Do you remember any of it?
I don't remember that much of it. No.
Damn.
But
What
it's
I
just
would
because
give-
he's on like every fourth YouTube thumbnail that I scroll
So
past.
true.
Yeah.
God, your YouTube algorithm is broken. You know, it's
It
so
is.
cursed.
Yeah.
Okay, so where is the race standing with John Tester versus these guys? So against Matt Rosendale, John Tester is sitting at 46%. John Tester is sitting at 43%. Against Tim Sheehy is sitting at 46%. John Tester at 42%. Matt Rosendale does a little worse, not noticeably, in the margin of error. Basically, They do exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
John Tester is in trouble. John Tester and Joe Manchin are in trouble. I am more bullish on Sherrod Brown winning.
Mm-hmm.
But Also, caveat here, Ohio's polling history has been the worst out of any other state in the entire country.
Okay.
Yeah, they have thought that Biden would win Ohio. They have actually had the most abysmal record in polling accuracy.
Interesting.
I've compared some of the polling of 2020 to the one that I cited previously, and they are sampling more Republicans in this poll than they were in 2020.
Like percentage-wise?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they might be learning, but I'm still not convinced that the political scientists and statisticians running the polls in Ohio know what they're doing yet, because they've literally been wrong so frequently over the years. It's really been bad. So
yeah, well, I mean, polls are just polls. They're not votes.
Polls.
So.
Just keep in mind that we want to focus really on the favorability numbers.
Yeah, which is why I feel like Tester, like I'm not as bearish on Tester. He's still at a 46%, 47% net favorable. That's not that bad.
No, it's really not.
No,
it's really not. Let's move on. Let's get back to the stuff that really matters. This is going to be our last current event, I believe. And it's really interesting, good news, man. So we had our August job report come in, where the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports how many jobs were added. And it's actually nuts. I predicted last month that we would see about 160,000 jobs created, 140 to 160,000 jobs created. We saw 187,000 jobs created.
Not too shabby.
Wage increases are about the same as they were in the previous month, dipping a little bit, but not by much. So we saw a 4.3% increase in August over last year. We don't have the CPI numbers yet for the month of August. Those will come in on September 15th, September 16th.
Okay.
So we'll update you on the real wage gains over last year then. But right now it's looking like real wages are still going to be up over the year. Where are these jobs getting created from? Well, obviously, education and health top the table. Education and health has topped the table off of all job reports over the last year, and I will expect to see that over the next 2 years too. So education and health created 102,000 jobs. Leisure and hospitality, up 40,000. Construction, that's what I want to talk about today, 22,000. Business services, 19,000. Manufacturing, 16,000. Government, 8,000. Retail, 6,300. We see a slowing in government-created jobs, and we see an increasing in manufacturing jobs, and we see an increase in business services jobs. Last month, I said that I was worried that business services were decreasing. We saw a decrease of 6,000 to 8,000 business services jobs last month, and I said that might be a slowdown indicator. The first people that companies fire are contractors, business services. This rebound of business services makes me much more bullish over the next 2 quarters. Much more bullish.
Okay.
And we have estimates from the Federal Reserve of St. Louis and Dallas that are suggesting that GDP growth in this quarter, in quarter 3 of this year, could be around 6%, which is massive compared to the rest of the G20 and the G7.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, that's kind of what this job creation
it's looking like
would make you expect. I am curious because you have a note here that the job growth figures for June and July were revised down by 110,000 jobs.
Yes.
I saw a video recently about how the job growth numbers are revised down every month.
Basically every month
after they come out. Do you have any idea why that is? Do you think like there's anything to it kind of being a political stunt?
No. That's an interesting thought, because now when you revise the numbers down, people don't pay attention to the revisions.
Exactly.
I understand that, but I'm so reluctant to suggest that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has been co-opted, because even during the Trump administration, these numbers would get revised down a lot.
But I mean, to me, that doesn't really say anything. It just means Trump wanted to play the same game.
Oh, okay. But the presidential appointments to the Bureau of Labor Statistics has very small impact on who does the analysis.
Well, I guess my question is, I'm curious, why is it always down? Why is it always being revised down? I guess like this would take a lot of a deep dive, and it's my fault for not deep diving into the methodology.
No, but you know what it might be?
What?
It might be for international sake. It might be trying to portray us on a better geopolitical scale, right? To stick it to China, better press in the international media rather than the domestic.
I guess, but that
but this is conspiracy right now. We don't actually know if they're doing any of this.
No, it's total speculation. I'm skeptical of that because I would expect the international agencies, the other countries, to actually pay attention to the revisions.
True.
Right? They're not just perusing news articles.
True. That makes sense.
I'm just curious.
It's not always down. I have seen times where it has gone up.
Okay.
I have seen that.
Well, what I wonder is, I think it could still be a domestic thing, but still related to the projection of strength. Because something when we've talked about, honestly, we're about to talk about a financial sector thing in our deep dive, and when I've learned about the economy and like when we talked about the banking failures, you realize how much the strength of the economy just depends on people's belief.
Oh yeah, it's all speculation a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's just whether they want to put their money, whether they want to keep consuming, whether they feel safe in doing so.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if it's like a strategy that the government employs to constantly,
like maybe
put
if
out
they
higher
have a
numbers.
range, again, this is speculation, but if they have a confidence interval, they stick it to the higher end of the confidence interval.
Exactly.
And then if it gets revised down, it's still in their range of confidence.
Yeah,
Right?
maybe.
Who knows? But the point is, we are still in a hot labor market and jobs are growing.
Yes.
Now, another positive sign, which is, this is going to sound counterintuitive, but it's positive, trust me. The unemployment rate rose from 3.5% to 3.8%. But economists and experts are suggesting that this is actually a really good sign because it shows that more people are looking for work. More people are entering the labor market right now, which means that a lot of our labor shortage problems look like they might be coming to an end. We've talked about a lot that the natural rate of unemployment in the United States is this 4% number. And us being below 4% is actually somewhat of an issue if we don't have an economy that is designed to be under 4%. It's good for worker power, and we all love worker power, but it's not great for economic growth. And if we want to see that 4% frictional unemployment rate, we want people to be able to freely move from job to job if they want. Like, we want that to be the process.
This is something I still don't get.
Well, I understand.
I don't intuitively grasp it. Like, you would think that having more jobs, having a lower unemployment rate, and having a lot of job openings per person would mean that they can more easily move from job to job.
But how would someone start a new business if labor is so tight? You know? How does someone start a new business?
Well, do you think people tend to start new businesses like once they become unemployed?
No, that's not what I mean. I just mean generally. Like any guy who has capital.
How can they get employees?
Yeah.
I see.
Like, how do you create a new business opportunity?
That's fair.
Marx talks about this. It's called the reserved force of labor.
Okay.
The labor reserve army or something.
Interesting.
And it is a flaw of capitalism, but it is, since we are in capitalism, it's somewhat of a necessity.
Okay.
Marx describes it not as a positive, not as like a negative per se, but something that exists and needs to exist for capitalism to function.
Okay.
And it's this reserve army of labor. So a new guy can make a new business, do that. Also, this is where he talks about it as a negative, as the reserved army of labor. It's a way to punish people by, if someone tries to buck managers, pluck them out, put a new guy in.
Sure.
Right. So has gives and takes. But we don't want that tight of a labor market. We want it to be fairly frictional.
That makes sense.
Yes. But now I want to dig into the construction because, man, I am such a nerd. Okay. I downloaded some data from the St. Louis Fed.
Okay.
And I downloaded the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. And I was doing some analysis, and I actually got to use my master's degree in math for this. And I'm so happy
That's awesome.
that I got to. And so here's what I was looking at. I was looking at the amount of non-residential construction jobs and how they've grown over time. And I wanted to see that, and these non-residential construction jobs, think of it like you're building commercial real estate, or you're building manufacturing facilities. And that's what I'm really interested in. So I wanted to compare how Biden's economic policy and the Democratic agenda in the House and Senate has encouraged construction in these areas compared to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed by Donald Trump in 2017, okay? So when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act went into effect in January of 2018, we saw that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act had a rate of growth over the years pre-COVID. So I'm using the time frame of January 2018 right up until COVID, because I don't want to include any post-COVID data. That's not fair to the policy, right? And I'm looking at this specific time frame. What is the rate of growth here? On the sheet there, I fed it with a polynomial model, but I'm not going to explain that. If we only look at this linearly, we're going to see that it basically has like a 0.5% rise every year. Okay. Every year you have like a 0.5% rise. Now, if we look at the effects of the CHIPS Science Act and the the Infrastructure Act that went into effect, both around a similar time frame, July of 2022, we saw a much heavier impact on this region. We saw increases of 4% every year, or like a multiplier of 4 year over year. So a multiplier of 0.5% from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and a multiplier of 4 with the CHIPS and Science Act in combination with the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill and the CHIPS and Science Act cost in total around $1 trillion, and the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act costed $1.8 trillion. So it was almost half as cheap to get
8 times the effect.
8 times the effect. And I thought that was so interesting.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I know.
That's good work.
Thank you.
That's like, you should get paid for that.
I was thinking the other night, I'm like, dude, I wish I could get paid for this. But then I did more. Okay? Then I did even more.
Holy shit.
So then I was like, this isn't answering my question fully. I want to understand the effects of manufacturing investment and manufacturing building construction on manufacturing jobs. Okay. I wanted to understand that relationship. So I did some autoregression analysis, and I was plotting I downloaded data from the St. Louis Fed of the amount of manufacturing investment that companies are doing. First of all, manufacturing investment is through the roof. It's actually insane. Like, I'm going to show Ben the chart right now, and his face is going to paint the whole picture. You ready for this? This is manufacturing investment.
Holy shit.
Isn't that nuts?
Is that monthly?
That's monthly since 2016 up until now.
Wow.
That's insane, right? We're talking about a doubling of manufacturing investment from 2016.
Yeah, and it like very clearly goes up once Biden is in office.
It's
like perfectly obvious.
That's literally the CHIPS and Science Act right there. We are seeing the effect, guys. It's beautiful. And that's the infrastructure bill.
Graphs
are so cool. I wish we could show graphs in the show.
We could we could edit them in, but I don't want to.
I don't want to. That's way too. We don't get paid for this yet.
No.
If we make a Patreon and you guys care to give us money, we'll put graphs in for you, okay?
We're going to have to start like writing reports for people.
I know. I would love to. I would love to write reports for people. Okay, so my point is here, I'm using autoregression and manufacturing investment as factors into manufacturing job growth. And I saw that if nothing changes, if manufacturing investment stays exactly the same, we expect to see steady growth of manufacturing up for the next year. We're talking reaching 13,000 manufacturing jobs. 13 million manufacturing jobs, because I forgot these numbers are all in millions. 13 million manufacturing jobs. If the investment in manufacturing goes up 0.5% every month over the next 12 months, we will be looking at 13,127,000, a 55,000 increase of jobs.
Damn.
If it goes down 0.5% every month, we're looking at 52,000 decrease. So
okay.
I've read some economic reports suggesting that manufacturing investment is about to start slowing, but then pick up again in 2025. We shall see. I'm kind of suggesting, I think we're going to be hitting that 1372 number. 13 million.
127?
No. I don't think I think that's too high.
Okay.
But
okay.
I think we're going to be in the difference between, if like this is less investment, this is more investment, this is the same, we're going to be like here.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
You know what I mean? But this was so much fun to do. I did this. This took me 8 hours.
Holy
It took me so long.
shit.
I was up until like 2 a.m. doing this.
That's insane.
I literally couldn't stop. And you know what's been so great? I learned so much stuff in school, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard to remember all the code. And it's
Sure.
hard to remember like even the right solutions. Like it's not just hard to remember the code. It's hard to remember all the analysis methodologies.
Yeah.
I just asked ChatGPT and it reminded me. And I was like, oh, sick. Now I know how to do everything again.
Yeah.
You know, I have my textbooks on the shelf. I don't need them
No.
ever again.
And you have to like figure out where all the information is in those.
Dude, ChatGPT is incredible. It's made me so efficient.
Yeah.
It's insane. The stuff I've been able to do now. Nuts. Anyway,
Awesome.
that's the August job report, guys. Really great stuff. Manufacturing on the rise. Manufacturing investment through the roof. We're in a good time to be in America right now.
Yeah, I guess so. Despite everything sucking.
Despite
apparently.
everything sucking, the economy is one thing that doesn't suck.
Yeah, no, the economy is strong right now.
Let's go into more about the economy.
In a place that it's really, really weak.
Really bad, actually.
Yeah, so deep dive.
Deep dive.
We looked into commercial real estate. And I suggested this to Anthony after our episode last week because I had been looking into it a little bit myself. The state of commercial real estate is bad for what I think is obvious reasons. COVID hit, people went to work from home, and people never stopped.
I literally have never had a job in person.
Yeah.
Every job and internship I've had has been remote. It's been my entire life.
Both of us work remotely full time. This is a massive problem, honestly, mostly more than anywhere else in New York and San Francisco, where there's such a heavy concentration of finance and tech jobs. All of these jobs are done in the digital world, right? There is nothing happening in the real physical world in these jobs. So it makes a ton of sense that employers are going to entice people to work for them by letting them work at home. Now, there has been a little bit of a shift away from this. There's been a return to office trend happening for some companies, some big companies, including Meta and Amazon. But there's still quite a significant chunk that's just allowing a bunch of people to work at home. So because of that, vacancy rates in offices are much higher. It's up to, I've seen numbers between like 12.5 and 16.5% as the vacancy rate in offices. I saw a number that says the net absorption, which is the amount of square feet in offices that are vacant, has fallen. The net absorption is negative 186.4 million square feet since the beginning of COVID, essentially.
Dude, could you imagine buying this big fancy building in downtown San Francisco and then it's just empty?
Yeah, it's brutal. And so what happens when there are these big vacancy rates? Well, the real estate developers, the building owners, are now not getting the rental income that they expected that they were going to get. And the problem is they have mortgages to pay off, really significant mortgages to pay off. And they've gone into these they've bought these buildings, they've developed these projects with the assumption, with the understanding that their vacancy rates are going to hover around 5%, like max.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, and that's the
what
only
they've
way
baked in.
That's how they're profitable, right? Maybe they can be 6% and break even, 7%, but 12%, 15%, these are unprecedented before COVID. So what's happening now is these building owners are failing to pay their mortgages, and they're defaulting more and more often on their mortgages. The default rate right now is at 4%, which is high, but still much lower than the 10% that it was in the Great Recession. Yeah. What I've seen is that people in the industry expect it to rise probably to around 6%, at least by the end of the year.
Okay.
So it probably will still go up. And these building owners have a few options now. They can liquidate their assets and try to pay off the debt in other ways besides the rental income. They can try to refinance, but that's a huge problem right now because interest rates have gotten so high.
Yeah.
So that's actually, refinancing is another whole issue in and of itself because of interest rates that have gotten so high.
Right, that makes their profitability number higher than 5%, or lower than 5%.
Yeah, their vacancy rate cannot even be 5%.
Yeah, no, if they refinance, then their vacancy rate has to be like 4.3.
Yeah, exactly. Which obviously isn't going to happen. So refinancing basically isn't even an option. So the last option is what people in the industry call throwing the keys back to the bank. And that means you purposely default on the loan because you want the bank to repossess the property.
Yeah.
Because you know that you can't profit off it. So you're like, and this is the problem with capitalism. Like the punishment isn't jail. Like you can just renege on your agreement and there be no real downside to it.
It's all cost benefit analysis.
Exactly.
And then you can find an optimal way to get around those things.
That's exactly. So what I see is happening is the banks are now going to be taking on these assets, which used to be like grade AAA assets. Like commercial real estate used to be the highest rated asset that you could possibly have.
It could be like this. It was like the safest.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's going to have lost like half its value.
That's what's so bad, because the stocks of these companies who are in commercial real estate plummeting.
Yeah.
It is in a year where the S&P 500 has performed exceedingly well.
Mm-hmm.
The commercial real estate stocks and commercial real estate ETFs are significantly underperforming the S&P and have actually lost value.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think what we're going to see is a lot of smaller banks collapsing and failing.
Right. Because who owns these mortgages for
Yes.
the commercial real estate? We want to know, how is it exposed? Because what made the 2008 financial crisis so dangerous was every bank and every financial institution was exposed to consumer mortgages.
Housing. Residential, yes.
Now, who is getting exposed to the commercial real estate? So this is what I have. I think it matches what you have pretty well.
Yeah.
So we have life insurance guys, CMBSs, CDOs, I don't know what that really means, different agencies. That makes up like 50% of the owners.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure.
When we look at small banks and community banks, these guys make up 12%. And regional banks, if we include regional banks, community banks, and small banks, then we're looking at around 25% of commercial real estate mortgages being owned by these types of banks.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That sounds about right to me.
Cool.
What my numbers are, 20% is like the top 23 banks.
Okay.
It's 20%. No. I looked at it a different way.
Okay.
So I looked at it as what percentage of the bank's assets are commercial real estate. And I found on average, it's the smaller banks. It's the banks with 1 to 10 billion in assets that have more commercial real estate on their books.
Yes.
They have about 33% is
Beautiful.
what I found.
That's exactly what I have here. I have community banks, total assets 1 to 10 billion. Indirect exposure is 13.5%. Their direct exposure is 24%. That makes your 35% number.
Yeah. So they're more exposed. I think the bigger banks, it's down
Nothing.
closer to 20%, and they're going to be completely fine. I've specifically looked at the like balance sheets of Bank of America, of Wells Fargo, JP Morgan. They have some exposure, but compared to like the pile of assets that they're sitting on, this isn't really going to make a dent.
Yeah, I have the top 25 largest banks. This is what the Federal Reserve classifies as large banks, $160 billion in total assets. Their total exposure, direct plus indirect, is around 7%. That's nothing compared to the regional community banks we're talking about that have 32% exposure, 35% exposure.
Yeah.
That's dangerous for them. That'll put them out of business.
But like weirdly, I find myself very grateful that the big banks aren't going to go down from this because they're so important systemically to what we have going on, which is so I don't know, just as a liberal, it's weird to be like, let's go big guys. Like we need you to survive and do better.
It's like, we're not going to have another Lehman Brothers situation from 2008.
No.
We're not going to have another Bear Stearns go under. That's not where commercial real estate is a danger.
No.
It's about the danger to the community banks.
Yes.
And as liberals, I'm scared of the hyper-monopolization of the banking industry that this may cause.
True.
If a lot of community and regional banks go under, they'll be accumulated and not accumulated. They'll be merged into these larger
They'll
firms.
be eaten up.
They'll just be eaten up.
Yeah, totally.
And that's dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's so funny because it is, to me, it's kind of a natural monopoly.
Right. It is
But
a natural monopoly.
it only works as a natural monopoly. You don't want to give a monopoly, even if it is a natural monopoly, to a profit-seeking organization.
Yep.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. And, I say it's a double-edged sword. It's good because now that our banking needs will be in larger and larger institutions, they'll be more and more secure from shocks, as we see.
Yes.
The issue here is that they're accumulating more and more economic power.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't have any democratic say in how to align that power with the people's will, it gets dangerous when they get more power.
Yeah.
So it's better for stability, worse for democracy.
Exactly. And it to me seems like the type of thing that probably wouldn't affect your everyday consumer too much, because even if they wanted to raise rates, that's where I think that new banks would spring up, like in the place of the older dead small banks that consumers could probably go and find. It would really hurt small businesses.
Yeah,
like
true.
that were growing and needed somewhat larger loans from big banks, and all of a sudden the industry is more and more consolidated, so money becomes more expensive.
Yeah. And that makes it difficult for small businesses to get the loans that they need to start up.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Definitely. I have a few other things to talk about on this. One is the differentiation between the types of buildings that are being the most affected here. So there's been talk about a flight to quality that's happened since COVID. And the line of thinking goes like, people don't want to return to a dingy office where the lighting is bad and there are cubicles everywhere and it's not really a great experience to be there, right? If that's the case, everyone, including the executives, the bosses, they want to stay in their nice homes, right? Hang out with their families, their dogs, their kids.
Play Smash Bros in between meetings.
Exactly. With the executive right here. But the tenants in nice buildings where you have a good cafeteria on the bottom floor and you have a pool table and like a lobby type of thing right next to where you work, and pinball and all this, or foosball, they want to go back in office. So these Class A building owners aren't going to struggle nearly as much. Those buildings are going to retain their value. It's the Class B building owners, the ones that
really
are kind of more
interesting.
run down, that are really over leveraged and facing a lot of difficulty.
Do you think that there's a benefit to this where these commercial real estate properties might be able to be turned into housing?
That is an angle. I've looked into the housing conversion thing a little bit.
It's hard.
Because it's hard and it's expensive. And so I think the problem there is similar in that, like, it turns into a math equation. Can you make it work, right? Can the costs, including the costs that you need to get the mortgage with the high rates currently, can you make that equation balance out with the amount that people will pay for those apartments?
I'll tell you this. We had an issue kind of similar to this in Brookline, where we were debating whether or not to build a new school. And we got an estimate on refurbishing the current school, and it was just as expensive as building an entire new school. And you're like, okay, well, at that point, I might as well build a new school.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these buildings might be in the same boat. It might be more expensive to refurbish rather than just destroy and start up. Yeah. That's not good from an environmental perspective. A lot of environmental engineers and architects really want buildings to get repurposed.
Definitely.
Because so much carbon that is locked in concrete that gets released into the atmosphere every time you destroy a building is insane.
Really?
Yeah. The destruction of buildings emits so much carbon.
I didn't know that.
Yes, because all of that carbon that's stored in the concrete.
Interesting. Okay.
Right?
Well, and I would also think just in terms of consolidation of space.
Oh, that too.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's reduce, reuse, and recycle. So,
right.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right, that reuse part is kind of important.
Definitely.
But so it's an interesting play. If they can, obviously we need more housing. If they can find a cost-benefit way to make this happen, that's where I would like a lot of this to go. And I would love for that to be the effect.
Yeah,
You know,
that would be fantastic.
if we see some regional banks collapse, and I want to bring one more number for the regional banks. So I have this number of the community banks. Of the banks that have 50% of their total assets in commercial real estate, 3.3% is direct exposure. Those are the guys who are going under.
Yeah.
Right.
It is kind of shocking how little of it is direct exposure.
Yeah, it's actually shocking. But those 3% of community banks are the ones who are gone.
Yeah.
They're gone.
And there's a significant percentage of the 50 of the others that are gone too. It's weird because I try to look into this a little bit, and sometimes this reading about finance makes me feel dumb because of how separated it, like of how distanced it starts to get from reality.
So true.
And so I felt reminiscent of watching The Big Short when I was reading about this, because there's the CMBS, which you mentioned here, is kind of the same thing that caused the financial crash in 2008.
That's like a CDO, right?
It is basically they're financial instruments that are tied to the value of a mortgage underneath them on commercial real estate. So it's literally like there's a scene where I think it's Selena Gomez is sitting at a table with, I forget who the other celebrity was.
That is classic.
And it's like let's let Selena Gomez and blah 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 explain what CDOs are to you. And they make a bet at the poker table, and there's a whole crowd watching them. And one person in the crowd makes a bet on Selena Gomez's bet and is like, I think she's going to win. So I'm going to bet on this, and you give me this amount of odds on it or whatever. And then someone heard that conversation and made a bet on that conversation.
Oh, man.
So you're getting these securities that are, again, like built more and more off on these mortgages. And I do wonder, I didn't see any data. I wonder, how far does this exposure go?
Is that the indirect exposure that we're talking about?
Yes.
That's the indirect exposure that we're talking about. So I have a little bit of numbers for it, right? So the community banks have 24% of direct exposure and 13% of indirect.
Okay.
So 13% indirect exposure. We're talking, like 13% of their bank's assets are in indirect exposure to the commercial real estate industry? That's pretty insane.
Yeah, it's scary. But I mean, the question is, can they safely, like who gets screwed here, right? Can they just default? Because this has already happened, where some of the biggest financial institutions in the world have just purposely defaulted on their bonds.
Yeah.
Blackstone did it. Brookfield did it.
Right.
Goldman Sachs did it.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, like, who was expecting those payments? Who sold those bonds to these institutions and isn't getting paid back now?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's public information.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that.
So, yeah. I guess we could only go so deep.
Yeah, so we'll end it here. Commercial real estate is not going to cause a financial crisis. It's not going to.
I don't think so.
I don't think it's going to happen.
The one other possibility I was going to say.
Oh yeah.
Of this causing a financial crisis is if these smaller banks collapsing triggers enough fear in the market to cause a bank run.
Man, that's good analysis, Ben.
Yes, that's the only thing. So it's like and we'll do our part to say, people, don't pull all of your money out of a Chase or a Bank of America.
Yeah, you're literally fine. I promise you.
You are fine. Okay. It is only these small banks that are over leveraged, potentially in trouble.
And I don't think anybody in here has more than $250,000 in their accounts that aren't covered by the FDIC. So you're fine.
Yeah.
No reason for a bank run. You guys are chilling.
Exactly.
But that's true. It's true. It could just cause fear in the market, downturns in the stocks, and then people get scared and bearish, right?
Yeah.
It's all about speculation, and it's all about perception.
Yeah. Our entire economy is built on a house of cards.
Steve Bernanke, he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve during the 2008 recession. He literally said, he's like, perception is everything. Perception is 80% of the battle. So when you see Jerome Powell get up there and give a speech, his speech is more important than the conversation they had in the boardroom.
Yes, literally. His words are so calculated. like the inflection that he's using.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
The analysis that people do of his speeches are insane. They will take every word and make a whole interpretation of it.
Articles are written in every single major publication on it.
No, it's insane. So commercial real estate, it's upsetting. It's going to endanger the community banks. Not a large enough thing to cause a financial crisis unless other things happen alongside it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The exposure just isn't there.
I keep thinking one more thing, but I'm just going to say one more thing to go even like zoomed out, bigger picture with this. Like capitalism, this is how capitalism exists, right? Things change and capitalism gets really like efficient and hyper focused or hyper tailored to one way of the world. Right. And this is a perfect example where commercial real estate is made. It's a AAA rated security. Right. It's like perfect. It's never going to go down. People are always going to need offices. And then something changes. And there's a bunch of money tied up in predicting that those changes wouldn't happen and hoping that the status quo would remain. And when it doesn't, the capitalists are the ones that end up getting hurt